Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Very elated and honored to be here in this group. I am really looking forward to all the inputs that will be shared and heard in the next 2 days. Not sure I'll be there throughout, but I think this is just the right time. Or maybe we're already late on having these discussions and thoughts, but obviously it's not the first. There's enough that's been happening. I think Praveen here spoke in great detail on the opportunity. So yes, India has been a bright spot, irrespective of the sectors we are talking about, and the scope in the chemical space is fairly wide. There have been a lot of challenges, so we speak both ways, right? There's always two sides to the coin. Recent past, whether it's from a supply chain perspective, in fact, even right now, for all of you who are involved, we see what happens with freight rates, for instance. In terms of availability, there's a lot of dependence from a raw material feedstock perspective. So yes, and that obviously turns into, something on the bottom line for companies which are looking to make it happen big and bigger, because the aspirations are big and we definitely want to make a mark in the space. So from my perspective, as I think of it, and of course, the company I represent into specialty chemicals, innovation is, yes, rightly said, at the core of it. A lot of times, and this is not just in the chemicals or specialty chemical space, I think a lot of the innovation we think about is, okay, let's make this fit for market. When we say fit for market, the first thing that comes to mind is low cost. Okay, so whatever we've got, let's try and drive it with a lower cost, and that would definitely drive the growth and the demand for it. To me, I think that's one part of it only. If we think across the value chain, a lot of the work, especially given the recent challenges post-COVID that we have all faced, is to also look at what can we do from a material substitution perspective, especially early on in the value chain. And even if I look across the value chain towards, the usage perspective, I think a lot of the innovation needs to also focus on the application. So one example that I can speak about, in India, and everybody is familiar, I guess, in this room with our usage pattern from a household perspective. So something closer to home, we use detergent bars, right? When we use detergent bars, the first thing is, and I'll just switch to Hindi, galta hai. You leave it in water, especially in a place like Mumbai, it's gonna disintegrate. So when we are talking about innovation from an application perspective, we are talking about, so what can prevent this from happening, just to make it more efficient for the user, right? That's how, as a company, we think about innovation, focus on the applications. Not just that, even when we are talking innovation, and we touched upon sustainability, right? Sustainability from the user's perspective. So we've also looked at, for instance, replacing palm oil derivatives. So it's kind of a win-win from the user perspective as well as from a sustainability perspective. Because I think the way organizations need to think of innovation combined with sustainability is the footprint that I create while creating the product. The negative impact of that should be less than the positive impact that the usage of that product can create. So that's how we think on sustainability, and that's how we think on innovation. So I don't know how many of you know, so we're big time into additives in the automotive space, and I know some of the topics are going to cover that. But for us, it's important, okay, so what's happening on the CO2 emissions, how are we making products or engines and systems more efficient for that? What are we doing from a fuel efficiency perspective? And all of that is what we're looking to drive as innovation. Like I said, it's a win-win, because as organizations and as communities, it's important, but also from the fact that from a user's perspective, it drives the right behaviors, it drives the right cost economics for the user. So to me, innovation needs to span the value chain. Also, as we're talking the value chain, I'm just anchoring my thought process around it. It's just easier to kind of tie it together. but we also, as a nation, as a set of organizations looking to make it big in this nation, for this nation, we need to think from a functional excellence perspective across each and every area. So it can no longer be that, yeah, I've kind of figured out something and somehow to make it happen. It literally, you know, if it's, when we think quality, we're thinking the Japanese the same way in each aspect of our functions and our working, whether it's on procurement, whether it's on managing our forex, whether it's on managing our supply chains, how, what, when, everything needs to drive that excellence. So it needs to be a concerted effort across. R&D is not where innovation only happens. R&D happens, innovation happens across the value chain. And that's, in my view, how we need to start thinking, how we need to start driving our whole thought process. And yes, when we are thinking about from a functional excellence standpoint, I really appreciated the point around the skill set. A lot of what skill set we generate or a skill set that we get perceived to have is, let's say, on the IT space. I like the way you put it, you know, from BPOs to KPOs to advisory. Why just make in India? Why not also research in India and look at India as that hub with the skill set? Again, the skill set also, it can't be like, okay, let's have high end. Because a lot of times, especially larger organizations are focused on, okay, let's drive high value products. No, we can't just focus on high value products. We need to also look at high volume products. It can't be like, let me do this niche, let me focus there. Because the market and the world awaits innovation and a thrust from countries like ours, also on the high volume side. So for me, the skill set needs to tie in a similar way end to end. We cannot focus just on one part of the value chain, on one part of functional excellence, and on one part of the skill set. It needs to be thought through, because if this has to be made to happen, and I appreciate the, you know, the wording around collaboration, the collaboration, industry, academia, government. I mean, the government has a ton of, you know, policies, programs in place to facilitate this industry, our industry. But is that enough? Yes, there's more that's needed. I'm sure for everybody who's tried to get some clearances, especially on the environmental side, whether it's for a new facility or it's about adding a product or a little more into that facility, 9 out of 10 times it seems we are delayed, right? So everybody needs to come to the party is how I would think about it. Everybody does realize we need to be at the party, but we need to be more actively involved over here. So for me, the thinking is across the board. The thinking is across functions, across skill sets, and that's where we can make the difference, not just focused on one aspect of it, if we've got to make a presence felt with a double-digit participation in this space globally. So with that, I'll take a pause and maybe hand over to our next speaker. Thank you.